Hi guys, welcome to a rather blustery and very dark Mull. You can probably see in the tree out there, it's blowing a hoolie and chucking it down as well. So I've come indoors once again because the weather's too bad to actually record outside. But not the end of the world today, because we are actually going to talk about technology today and how it's become a little bit of a double-edged sword. So there is no doubt whatsoever that during the pandemic, technology has been a real saviour for an awful lot of us, including myself. So when it comes to keeping in contact with family, friends, loved ones, it's been invaluable. Obviously, there's been a huge increase in the use of things like Zoom and FaceTime, I guess, and WhatsApp has grown dramatically as well. And that's allowed us to keep in contact and reduce social isolation. And also, it's helped us in particular with how we work with people. So for many people, their career has been able to, you know, keep going, to maintain itself. We've been able to keep in contact with not just all our current clients, but those that we'd worked with in the past, just to make sure they were okay and they had everything they need during the initial lockdown. So quite invaluable, the advances in technology that we've had, certainly over the last 10 years, and probably in ways we never envisaged using it. However, the double-edged sword is that obviously when we spend a lot more time looking at screens, now that can be your mobile phone, it could be some sort of tablet, or here, my laptop for work, which I have leaned back so I can actually get lit up by my cycle light. It's that dark today. And spending a lot of time looking at screens and getting that blue light in through our eyes, and the sort of physical position that we take up when we're looking at screens is having some profound impacts on us, both physically and mentally, and it's something we need to keep an eye on. Now, the average adult in the UK at the minute is spending about 6 to 7 hours a day in front of the screen, and that is quite worrying. And that's been boosted recently with a lot of the sort of streaming services that have come online, and especially during the pandemic when people have been isolating at home. We've seen a huge increase in the uptake of things like Disney Plus and Netflix and Amazon Prime. And obviously, once people get hooked in, excuse me, they carry on with these subscriptions. So we think screen time's been boosted by like 1 to 2 hours for each individual since we went into our first national lockdown. Now, there are some real issues with that. So what we find is with that level of excessive screen time, our cognitive function is decreasing. And by that, I mean our recall, our memory is impaired, our attention span is reduced as well, and our ability to focus on things. So basically our ability to take information in and retain it, to learn, is impaired quite significantly. Spending a lot of time looking at screens also impacts your sleep, and it tends to lead to sleep deprivation because of this blue light that's coming in from the screen. That it basically tricks your brain into thinking it's daytime, and that means that we'll struggle to get to sleep and maybe stay asleep. And the other obvious problem there is if you're sitting up till late at night and watching Netflix and watching some sort of thriller or drama or action movie, then by the time you switch that off and try to go to bed, the brain is still worrying with that media input that you've had. Where really we want to be trying to decelerate the brain before we go to bed, like a good hour beforehand, so that we slowly tune everything down to a point where we're ready to actually go to sleep. And the other problem is with sleep deprivation, it's not just our ability to learn is impaired as well. It's things like our hormone balance is thrown out of kilter. And that's especially true for two of the hormones that govern how full you feel or how satisfied you feel. So when you're sleep deprived, you will basically get the chemical signals that tell you to eat more and you haven't had enough. So it leads to us tend to put on weight and increase in obesity. And obviously because we're sat still all the time when we're looking at these screens, or invariably that tends to be what happens, then there's been a rise in obesity because of that, just due to inactivity. And then think about how we're actually seated. So you'll see here when I bring this up, my my shadow will fall across me. But basically, I have my laptop elevated a little bit. It could probably do with being a little bit higher, but I haven't really got anything that will lift it up that wee bit more. But basically, so the screen is a little bit higher, and my eye line should be sort of just on the top here. I'm probably just short of where I should be, really. But that stops me looking down, up and down all the time. And if I'm working from a sheet of paper or something like that, it can make things a little bit easier for me. But the problem here is that we keep refocusing at short distances and we're not looking out. So that can cause the eyes to suffer strain over time. I'm going to bring this down a little bit now so you can actually see me. So we suffer with eye strain, and we suffer with dry eyes because we tend to keep our eyes open for much longer than we normally would, and we're not blinking as much, so we don't get that lubrication on the outside of the eye. And also spending a lot of time focused on things that are quite close to you can lead to issues with headaches and migraines. And also when you're sitting down in quite an unnatural position, we're not designed to spend long times sat down. You probably realise that when you stand up, everything feels a bit tight and stiff and sore. So we're suffering more with neck pain because we tend to be looking down, be it the phone or Kindle or laptop. And also we're getting lower back problems because we're sat down all the time. Our core stability reduces, our hip flexors get sore, which is one of the main things that we saw at Healthy Options when we went into lockdown. We were spending a lot of time in this position. So there's many issues there going on with increased screen time. Not to mention the fact it takes up just a lot of your time. And perhaps it might be a good idea to take some of that time that we spend in front of the screen and take it to something that's a bit more productive and more of an active self-care. So if you imagine if we could engage and immerse ourselves in activities, say active activities or looking at healthy eating or any other active self-care, and do that as much as we engage ourselves in technology these days, then life would look very different. And perhaps we could try and get outside and get away from the screen, get away from the indoor lights and spend more time out there and just enjoy engaging with nature. And that has a huge impact on our mental health, our immune system, and also our functional capacity. And there might not be much Wi-Fi out there in the forest, but spending time out there, I guarantee you might just get a better connection. Catch up with you next week, guys. Take it easy. Bye-bye.